You won't believe the storm that just ripped through the palace corridors. King Charles, usually the picture of calm, the man who has endured scandals, snide whispers, and endless speculation with nothing more than a polite smile, has finally hit his breaking point. And who pushed him there? None other than his own son, Prince Harry. It was supposed to be simple, a quiet reunion, just a father, a son, and maybe, just maybe, the first steps toward healing years of bruised trust. Charles, with his heart softened by age and his recent health struggles, had arranged this personal moment. He wanted to look his boy in the eyes, pour a cup of tea, and just for a fleeting hour, set aside the bitterness. After all, blood is thicker than water, right? But oh, the irony. Within hours of that delicate tea at Clarence's house, private words that were supposed to remain locked in those ornate walls were splashed across the pages of The Guardian. Yes, Harry, who had sworn up and down to respect his father's privacy, handed everything over to the press. To Charles, it wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation served on a silver platter. Insiders say Charles felt like someone ripped the rug right from under him. He had been the one to insist on the meeting, even against the warnings of his closest advisors. They had whispered, "Your Majesty, don't do it. He'll twist it, he'll leak it, he'll use it," but Charles, ever the optimist, waved them off. And what did he get in return? Salt in a wound that was already bleeding, and this wasn't just any family squabble. Palace aides have a term for it now. Textbook Harry. The pattern is painfully familiar. He pleads for loyalty. He begs for reconciliation. He swears that this time privacy will be respected. Then, like clockwork, he walks out the palace doors and runs straight into the arms of journalists. The skeptics inside Clarence's house must be feeling smug right now. They predicted this would happen. They warned the king that any goodwill would be weaponized, packaged neatly into Harry's next truth-telling saga, whether that's another memoir, another podcast rant, or a headline-grabbing interview. And sure enough, he delivered. Hours after sipping tea with his father, Harry was out in the open talking about Charles's health, about arranging annual reunions, about bringing Meghan and the kids back into the royal fold. For Charles, the timing couldn't have been more devastating. Behind the crown, he's a man battling cancer, a father haunted by years of distance from his youngest son, and a grandfather desperate to see the little ones who've become strangers. His wish had been painfully simple, just a private chance to reconnect. Instead, he was blindsided again, served another reminder that trust with Harry is nothing but an illusion. And then, because apparently one storm wasn't enough, Harry jetted off to Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine. The very same Harry who has insisted for years that he's unsafe in Britain, that setting foot on his homeland soil was too dangerous, suddenly had no problem strutting into a live war zone, with a Guardian reporter in tow, no less. There he was, walking the streets of Kyiv, posing for photos, shaking hands with officials, soaking in the cameras as if he were on a state visit. Critics back home were livid. To them, this wasn't courage, it was theater. A glossy, ego-driven performance designed to keep Harry in the headlines, and William? Oh, don't even get him started. The future king reportedly sees it as nothing less than cosplay. Harry playing the role of a working royal, striding across tarmacs, bowing his head solemnly, accepting garlands, all while having abandoned the very duties that made those rituals meaningful. It's hypocrisy, pure and simple, and William is said to be seething over it. What makes this so explosive is the contradiction that defines Harry. He rails against the press, sues journalists, and screams about privacy one moment. The very next, he calls those same reporters to pour his heart out, to craft his narrative, to keep his name buzzing in headlines. He condemns the intrusion into his family life, then turns around and publishes page after page of intimate details in memoirs and interviews. The Guardian paints him as a crusader against misinformation. But inside Buckingham Palace, many see something darker. A man addicted to the spotlight, unable to resist the lure of one more sympathetic platform. And then came the dagger. During his interview, Harry had the audacity to speak about his father's health, almost as if he were narrating Charles's final chapter. To a king raised in the iron mold of Prince Philip, that wasn't compassion, it was condescension. Charles does not see himself as a victim. He does not want to be the centerpiece of Harry's redemption arc. Hearing his son speculate in public about how much time he might have left was a cruelty that shocked even the palace's most hardened critics. The fallout was swift. Any whispered hope Harry might sneak back into royal life in some part-time capacity, 4 or 5 official visits a year, half in, half out, was slammed shut. Advisors are unanimous. The Queen's ruling still stands. There can be no half-in, half-out royals. Not now, not ever. And if you think this is just about rules and protocol, think again. Harry has become too divisive, too toxic, too untrustworthy. Imagine a serving royal being booed in the streets. That's the risk. And according to polls, Harry's popularity in Britain has sunk so low that even Prince Andrew Andrew might be greeted more warmly. Yes, it's that bad. The palace corridors are tense, so tense you can almost hear the walls sigh. Not because of foreign dignitaries arriving, not because of grand ceremonies looming, but because of one man's choices echoing through every gilded hall. Harry's every word, every sigh, every little truth he drops becomes a fresh migraine for royal advisors. Imagine it, staff scrambling, not to prepare for a state dinner, not to polish the silver or brief the king on international policy, but to douse yet another fire Harry has lit. They're exhausted, insiders whisper. How many times can the same wound be ripped open before it refuses to heal? When Charles insisted on that reunion, his staff complied reluctantly, almost grimly. They knew. They had seen this movie before. One wrong word uttered over tea, one misinterpreted glance, and by morning it would all be in print. And sure enough, their fears were justified. Now those same aides are muttering, "We told him so." They had warned the king. They had begged him not to put himself through this again. And once more, Charles ignored them, following his heart instead of the cautious counsel of experience. The press, naturally, is giddy. To them, Harry is the gift that keeps on giving. Whether he's the rebel prince standing tall against the establishment or the spoiled duke sabotaging his family, his name sells papers. Every leak, every contradiction, every complaint, it's all currency in the tabloid's endless game. But what really twists the knife for Buckingham Palace is Harry's choice of platform. Of all the outlets, he chose The Guardian, a paper that the palace views as openly sympathetic to Harry and Meghan. It wasn't just an interview, it was a statement. A deliberate, calculated choice to bypass harsher scrutiny in favor of gentle coverage. To palace eyes, it was less about reconciliation and more about controlling the narrative. If Harry truly wanted to mend fences, royal reporters argue, he would have chosen silence. Silence would have spoken louder than any headline. But Harry doesn't do silence. Harry does sound bites. And while Charles simmers in private, William's fury is bubbling dangerously close to the surface. For years, William has been painted as the cautious heir, the man of duty, the embodiment of stability. But insiders whisper that his patience has snapped. This isn't just about betrayal anymore, it's about credibility. When Harry parades through Ukraine with cameras trailing, it undermines everything the monarchy works so hard to protect. The royals operate on symbolism, subtlety, restraint. Harry, in contrast, thrives on spectacle. And to William, watching his brother cosplay as a working royal while having abandoned the role is infuriating. Let's not forget the irony. Harry wanted out, he rejected the system, rejected the titles, rejected the duties. Yet every time it suits him, he slips right back into the trappings he abandoned, striding across foreign runways, accepting garlands, shaking hands as though he still represents the crown. It's theater, and William knows it. The British public knows it too. Polls now place Harry's popularity at historic lows. This is the same man once adored as the charming spare, the soldier prince, the cheeky brother who made the monarchy relatable. Crowds used to cheer him. Now they boo or turn away. Critics say it's simple. Hypocrisy doesn't sell. When Harry lectures about security, about press intrusion, about palace cruelty, all while living in a multi-million-dollar Californian mansion, it rings hollow. When he weeps about ordinary struggles while basking in luxury, it feels detached, tone-deaf. The more he speaks, the more he distances himself from the very people he claims to defend. King Charles faces two battles at once. On one side, the frailty of his own health, his diagnosis hanging over every private moment. On the other, the chaos stirred by his youngest son, whose every word ignites storms across front pages and social feeds. Imagine being the monarch of a nation, and yet the one story you cannot control is the voice of your own child. That's the bitter irony Charles lives with every single day. Insiders whisper that every time Harry opens his mouth, it feels like another storm gathering above Buckingham Palace. Headlines about Charles's climate work, overshadowed, state visits, and interfaith dialogues drowned out. All because Harry knows one thing too well. When he positions himself as the truth teller, he guarantees himself an audience. But truth is slippery. Harry's version often collides with the monarchy's silence, leaving a one-sided narrative. And in that clash, the monarchy can never win. They can't clap back like politicians. They can't argue like celebrities. Their silence is their shield, and Harry turns that shield into his microphone. Charles's greatest fear, say courtiers, is legacy. He waited longer than any heir in history to wear the crown. He endured ridicule for his passions, architecture, the environment, interfaith dialogue, yet he pressed on, determined to shape his reign with compassion and continuity. Now that he finally has the crown, he dreams of being remembered for stability and service. Instead, headlines about his son eclipse his every move, and the whispers about Harry possibly sneaking back into official royal life, those have been decisively crushed. Advisors are firm. The Queen's ruling stands. There will be no half-in, half-out arrangement, no part-time prince. The risk is too high. Think about it. Every handshake, every ribbon cut, every duty performed on behalf of the crown would carry a shadow of mistrust. Could Harry be trusted not to recount it in his next memoir? Could he resist spinning it into another podcast revelation? Few believe so. This is new territory. Scandals aren't new to the monarchy. Affairs, divorces, whispers of extravagance. But never before has a former working royal gone so public, so relentless, in tearing down the very institution he once represented. For William, the calculation is colder, sharper. His loyalty must lie with the crown above all else. Friends say he still feels deep hurt, but behind that hurt is a pragmatic truth. As heir, he cannot afford to be dragged into Harry's cycle of reconciliation and betrayal. His credibility as future king depends on drawing a firm line, and to him, Harry's behavior has left no choice. It's tragic in a way. The brothers who once symbolized hope for a modern monarchy, young, relatable, carrying Diana's torch, now stand as icons of division. Public opinion reinforces this fracture. Abroad, Harry still finds sympathy. But in Britain, the tide has turned. The public forgives many sins, but not hypocrisy. And Harry's shifting roles, victim, crusader, celebrity, critic, paint a picture few can trust. Reconciliation, once whispered about in hopeful corners, now looks more like a mirage. The monarchy survives on endurance, on knowing when to close ranks, and that's what's happening now. Charles may ache as a father, but as king, his responsibility is greater, safeguarding the crown. The message inside the palace is blunt. Harry will always be family, but he cannot be both inside and outside the institution. He cannot attack the crown while asking for a seat at its table. And in the still, quiet moments when the palace lights dim and the corridors fall silent, Charles is said to feel that sorrow deeply. He longs for peace with his son, but in the blazing glare of the public eye, he knows duty must come first.